Nice. And welcome to another exciting episode of Movie Geeks United. Tonight, a very special interview with director Sophie Fiennes about her new documentary film, The Pervert's Guide to the Cinema. Our thoughts on Spider-Man 3, the second part of our Summer Movie Madness series, and our flick picks of the week. Pick up the phone and get your geek on. Call 718-508-9477. 718-508-9477. And now, here are your favorite cinematic fanatics, Jamie, Chris, and Jerry. $148 million. Yes, you heard it correctly. Hey, everybody. These are the Movie Geeks. My name is Jamie, and Jerry and Chris are here, too. Hey, guys.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Word.
$148 million. This is what everyone's going to be talking about during the week. This is the opening weekend gross for Spider-Man 3. It set the record, all-time best opening weekend in history. It beat Pirates 2 by about $13 million. This is major news. It seems like people are hungry to flock into the multiplexes again. What does this say to you guys? Is this impressive or what?
I think anybody could have seen it. I mean, we talked about it last week. Anybody could have seen it coming. Yeah, obviously, it's incredibly impressive. Don't forget also, though, that it's the widest released movie of all time. So that, that obviously, even if it wasn't, if it was released on the same amount of screens as Pirates 2, probably would have made the same thing. But
I think so. I think that's a fair assessment. It would have, because they only were like 150 or so screens apart, I think.
And that doesn't make $13 million difference.
No, it doesn't, especially when your per-screen average is $38,000.
Right.
It's impressive. Second place film was Disturbia. Its per-screen average was about $1,800.
Well, it's been out. All the people who want to see it have pretty much seen it. It's like funny. When we went to go see this, we went to go see the midnight show at on Thursday, and it was funny. They had opened up two other screens because our screening had sold out, and they opened up two other screens that didn't sell out actually. But all the geeks who were stuck in the front were like, "Oh, let's go see that one." So, I guess, it's everyone wants to see this movie, and what we talked about last week, these things really reach across, like, broad demographics, like the Pirates films. Everyone wants to see these things. They're not like a Harry Potter or a Star Wars. I mean, these really appeal to everyone.
Yeah, until you see them. Yeah, they do.
We're going to share our thoughts on Spider-Man 3, all three of us, obviously, because we're movie geeks. We've seen it. And so we're going to share our personal reviews of it later on in the show. But I wanted to touch on something, and it's opening up a whole can of worms that we can do an entire show on. But, our listeners out there can write us and tell us if they think this is a worthy topic for a future show, possibly. We are obsessed with box office gross in a way that has never been before, it seems. It leads every news story. It's become a part of the popular vernacular. You know what a movie grossed. A movie's success is ultimately based on the dollars, much less than the content, it seems, nowadays. Do you guys feel that way or not?
I have so much to say about this that I want to go into it right now for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah, is it damaging?
It is damaging. It is damaging because of the little Columbia MBAs who run the studio now, those wonderful poisoners. You have such wonderful movies as Zodiac and Children of Men, but they don't make a lot of money. But let's face it, they're the movies that we're going to take with us for many years.
Right.
But then you have this shit like Wild Hogs makes a lot of money, and that's considered Travolta's like fourth or fifth comeback. But they don't really mean anything, but they make a lot of money, so it's a success. And I have to honestly say after, since I guess it's the mid to late 80s when they start publishing the box office gross in the papers at the end of every weekend. We had this conversation last night, but it's really disgusting. And my dad, a long time ago in another era, brought up a good point. He goes, why the hell do you give a shit what the movie made? You're not seeing any of that.
Right. But, it's the measurement of success. It's the American way, I guess. But is it becoming how artists gauge their level of success?
Chris?
I don't think so. An artist knows whether or not they've, made a movie that will last, a movie that, is seen by intellectuals as art, or if they've made Armageddon or any movie with a Roman numeral at the end of the title. But, like Jamie, and I guess Jerry, maybe you do too, but I completely disagree. I think it's important. And, the three of us went and saw Spider-Man 3. None of us really cared about it, but we went and saw it because it's an event, and we knew it was going to make a lot of money. We knew everybody was going to be talking about it. Is that the wrong reason to go see a movie? I don't know.
I don't think it's the wrong reason. I don't think it's the wrong reason, but I do. You bring up a good point, Chris, that for the artists, for the creative talent involved, no, it's not, because they think, and rightfully so, that they've done the best they can do, regardless of box office potential. They've put in their all, and it is sad though. But as a society, though, I think on the other side of the screen, if you will, unfortunately we do judge it. Zodiac. No one's, sadly, because that bombed. No one's going to say, "Oh, that's a great film." I mean, we will, because we really appreciate what Fincher and his crew brought to the film. But because the numbers are sadly much lower than they should be, it's not going to be remembered. But
their perception is colored not by the quality of the film, but by the number, the amount of money it made.
They who? The studios or
that's
or
the danger.
audience?
I'm talking about the movie-going audience in general, and that carries over into or maybe vice versa, into the studios and the people that greenlight the movies and the people that create the movies, most importantly.
Well, what about a movie like the original Hulk? That's a movie that made $60 million opening weekend. That's a lot of money. I mean, that's not Spider-Man 3 money, but $60 million opening is pretty big.
But then drop to the largest.
It dropped a lot, but it made enough money that they're now thinking that they can make a sequel. But that movie, even though it made all that money, is still considered to be a failure. There's plenty of movies that make a lot of money that are considered to be
creative failures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think this is kind of like a stitch in the fabric of something deeper. And Chris and I, were talking for hours about this last night. And I don't want to open up a whole can of worms, but I'll just...
You already opened it, so don't worry about it.
I know. It seems to be a part of the dumbing down of movies and movie audiences.
Yes and no.
Well, hear me out. We're conditioned to only exist on a diet of crappy movies. It's the same reason why we're a fat country, because we have McDonald's on it's the only thing we're fed.
You're running for president, aren't you?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Just like food. You can either pull into McDonald's, and you can order up Wild Hogs, or you can order up Harry Potter 57 or whatever they've got there, or you can take the trip to the grocery store. You can go over to the produce aisle, pick up some apples, some bananas, a copy of Sideways, a copy of Little Miss Sunshine. It's just the same thing. You got to work a little bit. You got to try to see quality products.
No, you're right. I mean, I agree with that. This is the same conversation at this house for 20 years. So, I mean, it's just, I see what you're saying. I just don't want to read it. I don't want to generalize. I don't think the whole movie-going audience is like that. But I'm afraid a good chunk of it is, though, from what I've seen online.
Well, most people don't watch movies the way that, movie geeks and people that are nuts about movies. I mean, everybody likes movies, and then there's people, like ourselves and a lot of the people that listen to the show that are just nuts about movies and want to talk about movies all the time. But it's two different things. Those regular people that like movies, they just want to be entertained. They're not looking for, an experience that's going to change them emotionally or anything. They just want to have a good time. They want to laugh. They want to eat some popcorn and get a fat ass, and then they want to go home. They want to have sex. They want to fall asleep. That's it. So
no, you're right. I just didn't want to generalize, but no. Look, we've had, like I said, this conversation happens at this house, every day, and you're absolutely right. I can't argue with that. I can't argue with any of that because I know in my heart of hearts it's right. I've known that since 1987. I've known that's the truth. That is the cold, hard truth.
Yeah. Well, there's always been a battle between art and commerce. And I think that commerce is definitely winning out big time.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
What you're saying is absolutely right. I mean, you have people in this country who are trying to make good films. I mean, I know some of them. You have screenwriters in this country who are instead doing copy for Mercedes-Benz, but they really want to be writing screenplays. I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. This hits very close to home. But commerce sadly does win out over art. It's pathetic, isn't it?
Yeah, but at the same time, thank God for the DVD revolution. It really gives a venue for all of these movies to have their place, much more than theatrical. Theatrical is pretty much a thing of the past for the independent filmmaker by and large. DVD is their salvation.
Yeah, you look at the grosses for independent films and even foreign films. I have to say, there's a rare exception of some foreign films like the martial arts films, but it was very rare in the last couple of years for a foreign film or an independent film to gross over $1 million.
Right.
It's pathetic.
So what you guys are saying then is that you're upset that these movies don't make a lot more money, these smaller, independent, these art movies, I mean, if I'm hearing you right, that's what you're saying. So
yeah, you're hearing it right, Chris. I'm not going to argue with you. You're hearing it right, but there's nothing we can do about it.
No, and I don't think there is anything that can be done about it. I mean, it is a business. Even those art movies, they're product. They're art, and all the art movies are product. Not all of the product is art,
Right.
I'm not arguing, Spider-Man, take Spider-Man series out of this, because obviously we're all fans of Sam Raimi. We think that he's, at the very least, he's a really competent director, and my viewpoint is that he's a visionary. He has a real strong hold on what a movie should be and how to achieve what he wants from it. But it's these big event movies that so many of them are just dumbed down, and that's the only thing that we're really being fed and is being marketed to us. And so that becomes all there is for the moviegoer. There's no material out there to really stimulate us in a different way,
right?
Than just on the basis of a theme park ride.
God, ain't that the truth?
And this is my argument, and Chris, I'm going to be able to hear you roll your eyes.
Yeah, I think you can already hear it. It's already
I hear it from here, man.
What I'm saying is, those movies were the most popular movies in the 70s. The kinds of movies that are all but obsolete now.
Well, Jamie, I know you and I have a very strong attachment to the message movies of the 70s, the films that broke out. And I have to say, a couple months ago, those films were betrayed. God, I'm going to get crucified for this, but the baby boomers made those films what they were, right? They made Taxi Driver. They made Godfathers 1 and 2, All the President's Men, and even Easy Rider, if you want to go back that far to the late 60s. But they all decided that the film for them was Wild Hogs. And let's face it, that's a baby boomer film. That was a film marketed and made for baby boomers.
Yeah.
And they betrayed all their ideals, all their hopes and aspirations for Wild Hogs.
They betrayed all their hopes and aspirations a long time ago, believe me.
I know. I'm being melodramatic. I have a flair for that. That's
we're really blaming the downfall of our society on Wild Hogs. I know every example of a movie that's responsible for the dumbing down of America, it always goes back to Wild Hogs.
What about Norbit?
Norbit?
Yeah, I'll throw that in there. Hell, I'll throw Dead Silence in there too, but that didn't do well, so I can't really.
I just don't understand, because every year, now there might not be as many good movies in the movie theater, but every year, since movies have been around, there's been mostly crap that's made, and that includes the 70s, and then, a handful of really good movies. There were a lot of good movies in the 70s, there were a lot of good movies in the 80s, 90s, the double aughts,
there were a lot of good movies in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, too.
Absolutely. So, it's always that way. It's always been mostly crap and, some good movies. This year, we've already named, Hot Fuzz was a good movie that came out this year.
There's a lot of good ones.
Zodiac is a good movie that came out this year. You know, we've gotten good movies, and these movies are at the theater. Hot Fuzz is at the theater right now, playing right next door to Spider-Man.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, though, by going back in time, and I would like to, I guess, if we try to close this out, I was talking to Jamie about this last night. Back in before even all this became like it's always been about a business. I know people romanticize and say, it wasn't always about commerce. It was always about making money.
Absolutely.
Always. From the time they invented the technique, Mrs. Adolph Zukor in Philadelphia said that when at a movie theater that you made people pay before they saw the product. Before they even saw it, you made them pay. She was like, that's ingenious.
I agree 100%.
And that's what and ever since then, that's what it's been. It's always been about making a business. From the silent Ben-Hur, the silent King of Kings, Birth of a Nation, it's always been about making money. Art was always secondary. Do not ever let anyone tell you different. These people have always been about making money first and foremost.
Yeah. Well, let's close this topic out because we can fill 3 shows with these.
I can fill 20, but okay.
Yeah, it's something else. So we'll tackle this full-fledged on another show. I'm very excited tonight because we have the director of a film as our guest tonight, and this film is it's very entertaining and at the same time extremely intellectually stimulating. So it fits that we've kind of done the prelude in this conversation here. But you guys ready for my Charlie Rose intro? I wrote another one up.
I love Charlie Rose. Disregard everything I said 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you got a lot of flack. You know?
I got a lot of flack. Dude, my house is targeted by satellite weapons right now, okay?
I'm with you, Jerry. I don't see what's so special about it, but,
Charlie Rose is my idol, man, and this guest has actually been on Charlie Rose.
He's okay.
He's cool.
Okay.
He's cool in my book.
Our guest tonight began her journey into filmmaking at the age of 19 when she worked under the tutelage of acclaimed director Peter Greenaway, eventually acting as a second assistant director on his film Prospero's Books, and as an art director on The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. Documentary work followed, including a highly respected piece on Danish director Lars von Trier. Her first feature-length documentary effort was Hoover Street Revival, an examination of a Pentecostal church community in South Central Los Angeles. Her new film is called The Pervert's Guide to Cinema, and it's inspired raves from festival audiences and critics around the globe. The picture follows Slovenian philosopher and psychoanalyst Slavoj Zizek as he navigates through an exhilarating roster of some of our most beloved films, and in the process, attempts to uncover what they say about our deepest desires and our darkest fantasies. Along the way, movie lovers have an opportunity to savor invaluable and interesting insights into the works of Hitchcock, David Lynch, Charlie Chaplin, Stanley Kubrick, Andrei Tarkovsky, Francis Coppola, David Fincher, and many others. It is our pleasure to welcome to the show the co-editor, co-producer, and the director of Pervert's Guide to Cinema, Sophie Fiennes. Sophie, are you there?
I'm there. Hi, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here in London. Hello.
It's great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
No, it's my pleasure. I've enjoyed listening in to the tail end of your previous conversation.
Oh, well, thank you.
I wanted to start. First of all, I saw this movie a couple of weeks ago at the Sarasota Film Festival, and I was just blown away. It was so stimulating and it's so entertaining and enjoyable, and it just gave you a whole new level of appreciation for these great films. I certainly want to talk about your film, but first of all, I want to start out. You worked for 4.5 years with Peter Greenaway, is that correct?
Yes, I did. I mean, as you were saying, I started at 19, and I'd seen those Edmonton Noughts when I was like about 17, and I was at art school, and I was really struck by the way that he'd constructed the film, and I was lucky enough to be introduced to his producer, who was looking for a runner, and I became like a production runner on The Belly of an Architect, and then met Peter, and he realized that I was gunning for him, so and interested in what he was doing. So I had a very lucky break in that I was able to work for 4.5 years on feature films from Drowning by Numbers, which I was the location manager on. Although at that stage, because the unions were very strong in the UK, I couldn't be credited as location manager. but it was all shot in an area of England which is called Suffolk on the East Coast. And I'd never worked on a film in my life, let alone being the location manager on a feature. So it took years off my life, I think, because it was very hair-raising. We even had a hurricane, which raised the location to pulp. But it was an amazing immersion into the practical side of filmmaking, and also working with someone like Peter Greenaway. He was a sort of real author, an auteur in the true sense of the word, developing his own film language. And so I had a great way of breaking into making films, because there's a huge amount of practical knowledge that you need to gather, because there are so many different stages to film production. So I really valued that experience.
What were some of the things that you took away from him and kind of helped to inform who you are as an artist, do you think?
Well, I think I saw him take a lot of risks, and I saw him follow what he really wanted to do against the odds, and in the face of criticism, and and sometimes criticism can leave some people unable to make a film for years and years. And he always, his instinct for what he wanted to do, always allowed him to rise beyond any apparent failures. And also, there was a practical side to it. I mean, when I started making my own films, although the Pervert's Guide to Cinema is an ideas film, and in that sense, I think there was an interest in Peter as a filmmaker who makes films that are ideas orientated. Yeah. Like, he sort of talks of his characters as being signposts to ideas, and that's one of the reasons why people feel that he's sort of dehumanizing as a filmmaker. There's not this kind of warmth that people look for in cinema. But I feel that my films are quite different in their tone, but they are ideas orientated, and so I think I enjoyed working with him and knowing that it's possible to make cinema and films that are full of ideas.
Well, I read or I heard an interview that you did with the BBC, I believe, where you said that you don't consider yourself a documentary filmmaker, at least not in the traditional sense. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean by that I have absolutely no journalistic background. All of my experiences. Well, I did a foundation course at an art school course, and then I started working with Peter, who's obviously making fiction and very visually orientated, aesthetic filmmaking. And so the idea of what I imagine learning to make documentaries might be about, if I had learned, it would be about kind of social theory or anthropology, journalism, documenting truths, getting behind the facade, whereas most of my films are interested in appearance, which is why I like Slavoy's theories around the nature of appearance. When I made Who the Street Revival, I was more interested in the symbolic role that the pastor had in his community, and lots of people criticized me for not interviewing him. But for me, an interview is like this, is where I'm having to PR myself, I'm having to consider how I'm going to present myself, whereas if you could see me now in my flat and just observe me standing here, on a Sunday night, you'd have a very different sense of maybe of what you would see of me as if you were to observe me than how I'm able to speak about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there's a difference for me in what happens when you observe. When you put a camera on things, they sort of become different. The frame on life changes life, and it becomes something other. It becomes possibly cinema. It certainly becomes boxes of videotapes. But in the end, I think that my background has been, the films that I've looked at have all been fiction films since I was 19, and many of the films in the Pervert's Guide to Cinema. So in that sense, I'm coming from a background which is orientated towards fiction and not documentary. But having said that, there are documentary filmmakers like Fred Wiseman, who, I find his work fascinating, but my knowledge is very limited in documentary.
Well, speaking of Zizek, how did you happen upon his work, and what about it spoke to you and made you realize that this could be your next film?
Well, I was doing research, and I sort of was interested in this relationship between fiction and reality, or documentary as opposed to drama, or what it is that is the function of storytelling as opposed to documenting the world, making documents. Because I certainly, love the process of making a document, and in a sense, I tried to make a document of Zizek's ideas on cinema, on the one hand, with making this film. So I was interested in this relationship between storytelling and documenting, and it seems like that, and also this question of really a kind of very rich thinking, intellectually challenging mind gym that Slavoj presents us with. When you read his books, you're taken on a kind of mental assault course, and you're sort of hung upside down and suddenly see things in a different way, and it's really invigorating. So the more I read, the more excited I was by how he was looking at cinema, because it was something that I've been looking at, since I was at art school.
Yeah.
So, I was just excited it was a way to kind of go into it beyond just reading the books. It was a way to actually explore it through the medium that I work in, which is film. So it was testing these theories on the actual films that he's talking to, and seeing what happens to the theories and what happens to the films by putting them against each other.
I think that this is definitely a film that belongs in any movie lover's library. It's essential.
It's very nice that it's been having such a good response, because in a sense it's, for me, the output of a kind of research for myself, and so in that sense it's nice that if you do a kind of project that's you have a personal excitement for, and then you realize that kind of excitement and that way of thinking is actually shared by a lot of people.
Oh yeah, and I think the first thing that obviously struck me when I saw it on the festival schedule, obviously I was taken by the title. And you said that the title is somewhat of a MacGuffin, but you can read it as somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but after seeing the film, it seems to make perfect sense somehow. How does that title speak to the content of the film for you?
Well, yeah, and I think what you're saying is true. I sort of agree with it. I mean, I think that actually, fundamentally, it's a very appropriate title for the film. But, it became clear to me that for those who don't kind of, read psychoanalytic theory, the word pervert means something very, very simple, whereas actually it's a pathology that's explored much in psychoanalytic thought. So, and of course the relationship between viewing and the effect of viewing simulations of reality on us is a kind of pervert practice in a sense. It's of course it's a very relevant title, but it also is a way to make people stop and think. And if I had said, Slavoj Žižek, psychoanalytic theories on cinema, the film might not have made people see it in a list of other films. So in a way I was creating the title, these things just come to you kind of instant, for me anyway, it just came to me as a title kind of out of the blue, and I thought, yeah, that means that if I get this film commissioned by the UK TV broadcaster, I will address all their needs for attracting an audience.
Yes.
And behind the title, I can make the kind of challenging, provocative, thought-provoking film that I want to make, because the title will do all of the kind of necessary stuff of attracting attention.
Oh yeah, it definitely attracted my attention. So the structure of the film, it's separated into three parts. Essentially, it's Zizek analyzing different moments from over 43 films, and at times actually going into the world of the films, whether it's through set recreation or going to the actual locations in which these films take place. It seemed like a difficult thing to gauge. Was it scripted, or did you outline the scenes at all, or what he would say?
The thing about having kind of in making my own work as opposed to working with Greenaway, as my own work has been documentary, the thing about making documentaries is that you don't really define things in advance too much. Right. You have a kind of a question and you have a quest. So then you create material, but you create it with definite questions. So those questions generate a certain framework, that you're following, and then you end up with a lot of material. So, I definitely had certain films that I was very much wanting to represent because I liked the series, and sometimes I just so liked the series that I kind of had to have them in because they were, they were just sort of compelling ideas. They're kind of sometimes almost revelations if you've never come across them before. And then in other moments, Slavoj would just come up with material that I hadn't planned with him. And that was very exciting because it was stuff that I'd never heard before. And what was nice about it was that because I made these reconstructions of sets from the films, this kind of seemed to generate certain points that he wanted to make. So it was like setting a stage, literally, or setting a scene. And within that, he then, almost in a sense, he's like a jazz musician who knows the instrument that he's playing, and he knows how to come up with different kinds of sounds, as it were. So, he would suddenly come up with material that I hadn't, planned, but that was, those moments of, in the shooting was very exciting. And then, I spent 9 months editing it.
My reaction, I'm sure, was like everyone else in the theater. There's so many films that you feature. It just made me want to go out and pick up all those films again and watch them, because you would feel like you could watch them from a whole new perspective. How'd you go about choosing? You said that there's some that you fought for, and was it difficult getting all those clips together?
Yeah, it was a lot of work, and a lot of, that's why the editing took a lot of time, and it's also, incredibly, delicate how to unfurl the thinking, the Zizek thinking. So, even just to sort of allow people to see, like, a moment in a Chaplin film, to wait for the next point to be made, to time it very carefully so that people can comprehend the images and the intent of the film and what the film's doing, and then his point about how to look at it. So he's giving you these clues of how to see, like this end sequence of City Lights, the Chaplin film, just getting the sort of sense of the delivery. Was, it's amazing how a few frames here, a few frames there can just make it clearer or not. So a lot of the process of working with the clips and with the series is really to try to get the thing as clear as possible. It's about trying to make the ideas connect as immediately with the audience as possible.
There's just so many great films that are represented here, and I think I want to get into those films and his thoughts on it and your thoughts on them. I think it's fair to say that there seems to be a particular emphasis on the films of Hitchcock and Lynch. Yeah,
he's written a lot about Hitchcock and David Lynch. He's a huge Lynch fan. So these are two sort of masters of cinema that he's worked particularly on, and he wrote a whole book, or he actually edited a whole book with essays by different people and some, by himself, called Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Hitchcock but were too afraid to ask Lacan. And that's a wonderful book to read to get his ideas on Hitchcock. He wrote a special essay on David Lynch called The Art of the Ridiculous Sublime, which is about Lost Highway. And then there's also, other the Lynch films that he's referring to in many of his other books. I think if you want to read the starter book on his ideas on cinema, it's really Enjoy Your Symptom. That would be a book to start on, which is all about cinema.
What do you think it is about these two directors specifically that kind of makes sense for this kind of exploration?
Well, I think that it's clear from the film that the sort of Lacanian way of looking at images can be understood through these films, because the language of a Lynch film and the way that the themes that he's exploring, whether it's these obscene fathers, the repetition of certain motifs of male characters that recur in Lynch's films, or whether it's his fascination with female sexuality or female subjectivity. This is also the big area in Hitchcock, the kind of Hitchcock blondes, what happens to the women in Hitchcock. And, part of this for me as a woman, is, as a woman fascinated by the kinds of narratives that men create, and that form the whole of cinema, arguably 99% of it, to actually have a way to look at it through this lens, is great. And I think these two filmmakers go into this kind of thorny area. If you've seen Inland Empire, it's a film it's all about this predicament of, it says it's a film about the women in trouble. So in that sense, if sexuality is the kind of recurring traumatic field for human beings, then the filmmakers who actually go in a kind of daring way, or even in a sort of playful, somewhat kinky way, as Hitchcock does, then they become, the films that they make become great opportunities to understand how relationships between men and women might be working.
Yeah. I was very pleased. I'm such a movie geek, especially about Lynch films.
Yeah.
My favorite film is actually Wild at Heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just over the moon to see that represented in your film. Specifically, the scene that's explored in that one is the Bobby Peru Lula scene.
Yeah, yeah.
What kind of deductions did he make from that particular scene?
Well, this is a scene that he writes about a lot, and in fact, he says more about it than was possible to include in the film. But fundamentally, what he says about this famous scene where Bobby Peru forces Laura Dern to ask him to fuck her, and then at the moment which she says okay, then he says, "Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, do you know what? Maybe not now. Thanks very much. Bye." So what he does is that he forces her to announce her fantasy, and then he leaves he walks away from it, and this is what Slavoj refers to as a mental rape, which is that rather than to impose the act without the fantasy, here he evokes the fantasy but doesn't pass to the act, so he leaves her feeling humiliated, and this is a kind of a mental rape, pulling out the fantasy from the woman but not actually completing the act.
Yeah.
But there's not much more that you can read about what he says about this scene and how Bobby Peru functions. We revisit Bobby Peru in part 3 of the film, and he's one of these obscene fathers, one of these kinds of overpotent, kind of outrageously, over-libidinally alive male characters that Lynch's films are full of, and there's this whole question of how in Lynch's films, we pass from this reality, as it were, kind of slightly ersatz reality, that we're then moving into this overblown sort of gothic fantasy in which these very overly alive, terrifying figures exist. And then, of course, as he says, they have to be sacrificed. They die. They usually die like Frank in Blue Velvet dies, and
yeah.
And then the point, also a point that I couldn't get in the film, which because of the sort of constraints of screen time, is this thing that Slavoj says that there's almost a sadness when you leave this weird, terrifying nightmare world and you have to return, like in Blue Velvet or like in Wild at Heart, when the Galinda character reappears and says in this kind of phony way, "Oh, sailor, don't give up on love," and we feel like we've returned to a kind of phony, sort of controlled fantasy but beneath it there's something much more terrifying and explosive, and that's what Lynch's films really go into. Yeah. And that's what psychoanalysis goes into. So, it's no surprise that someone like Lynch is sort of doing this transcendental meditation or working in a very uncensored way with his imagination.
As I was watching the film, and particularly the Lynch clips, I was thinking, I'm wondering if you've heard from any of the obviously living directors that you profile in this film.
Well, we actually went, Slavoj and I went to LA, and at one point I was thinking to actually have interviews with some of the filmmakers, but it's so hard. I mean, I was trying to get an interview with Walter Murch, we were trying to get an interview with Lynch. We actually went all the way to LA, and then half an hour before the interview we were told that he was sick and unable to do the interview. So that didn't happen, and in fact Slavoj was incredibly relieved, I think, because he's such a huge fan, but I think to actually meet Lynch, and in a funny way, they sort of don't need to meet, or what, I mean, if David Lynch is famous for not wanting to kind of analyze his films himself, and I totally understand that position. So I don't know whether it would be even of interest. Lars von Trier, who I had also made a film about, we tried to, get a meeting with him, but I think if you're making these kinds of films, you want to keep on making them without necessarily being too aware of what it is that you're doing. You need to work probably more intuitively and, directly with your imagination.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you might start censoring or over-interpreting before you make films.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film, and I want to let our listeners know how they can view the film themselves. How can they find it?
Sure. Well, the film is self-distributed by us because it was a question really as a documentary, as it were, a specialist documentary, just to simply make the film available. So, we've made it available, and it's from the film's website. You can purchase it as a DVD, and it's posted anywhere in the world for the same price. And, we're slowly getting it into bookshops. If bookshops contact us and want to stock it, we try to, we make that possible. And we're slowly working on, making it available where people want it. So, the film's website is www.thepervertsguide.com, and you can get it from there.
Okay. And I highly recommend you go to thepervertsguide.com and purchase it at once. If you're a movie fan like we are, it's essential viewing, really. And, Sophie, thank you so much for being on our show tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you
very much.
Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Sophie Fiennes, The Pervert's Guide to Cinema. Find it, thepervertsguide.com. Buy it. You will thank me. Any movie lover out there, it belongs in your library, and you'll get more and more from it the more times you view it. A great guest, a great artist, and we're so grateful to have her on the show.
Yes, we are.
All right, guys. So from perverts to spiders, we've reached the
wow.
point.
That's you can't ask for a better segue. Shit.
I know. I'm the king of segue, man.
Yeah, you are.
From perverts to spiders sounds like a Cronenberg movie.
It probably is a Cronenberg movie we just don't know about.
Let's talk Spider-Man 3. Let's give our viewpoints on the film. Let's start with Chris. I know you have a very strong opinion on this picture. What do you think?
I have a strong opinion in a couple of different ways. I mean, I was open about the fact that I was not nuts about the first two movies. I actually thought the first one was a pretty good movie. I wasn't nuts about the second one. I thought it was just a little too campy. I was a big comic book fan as a kid and as a teenager, and specifically Spider-Man was close to my heart. And the biggest problem I have with it is it's a comic book nerd complaint, and I know a lot of other people probably feel that way. Sam Raimi was open about the fact that he didn't want to tackle Venom. He didn't want Venom to be, one of the villains. And the producers basically came to him on this third movie and said, hey, don't be selfish. You're of a generation that has a certain set of characters that they want in the movie, and then there's a whole younger generation that is really dying for us to put Venom in a Spider-Man, because the young people, Venom is the big Spider-Man villain, not Green Goblin, and I was kind of offended by the way that he kind of half-heartedly threw Venom in there, and
it's an afterthought almost.
Yeah, totally an afterthought. But that's my mealy-mouthed comic book geek complaint.
Well, as a comic book geek who has a particular affection for Spider-Man, you've been varying degrees of lukewarm on all three of the movies, as you've said.
Right.
Do you think Sam Raimi's the wrong director for it?
No, I don't. That's what's funny about it, because I think that when he gets the action, when he has the action moving in those movies, I think they're perfect. They're exactly like Spider-Man's supposed to be. But I don't know if you guys noticed it, but when I went and saw it on Friday night, obviously Full House, and the action is so over the top in this movie, which I think is great, but what suffers, and a lot of people have said this, as the dramatic scenes, and I could feel the restlessness in the audience and in myself, too, and I kind of feel like, it kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier, about we're kind of force-fed just, nonstop action.
That's a good point.
I'm thinking, why am I so restless? I just had probably the most expensive action scene ever filmed in front of me, and already I'm bored, 20 seconds later. So I don't know why I feel that way, but I did, and I can't deny it.
It's universal.
You didn't feel like it was anchored in the humanity kind of that needed to be there?
No, I feel like it was rigidly anchored back and forth between action and the humanity, and so much so that so rigidly that it felt like an exercise or something like that.
let's get Mark's take on it before we turn to Jerry.
Okay, that's a good plan.
Mark is on the line, our faithful listener and faithful caller. Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
You've never been referred to as faithful before, have you?
No, not really. I'm unfaithful as it stands lately, but yeah, this movie. Oh my God! I get suckered into this scam that Hollywood pulls over my eyes every single time, whether it's The Matrix Reloaded or whether it's Superman Returns or whether it's this fucking movie. Every single time I buy into the hype, and of course I should know better because I've been around movies. I love movies. I've loved them my entire life. And the crushing weight of disappointment that I felt after watching this movie was just unparalleled. I mean, I was talking to Chris.
You bought into all the buzz. You were really.
I did. It's Spider-Man. It's going to be, huge, and it's got Venom, and it's got Sandman, but I was there to see, serious action movie, and I didn't realize it was going to turn into a friggin' romantic, dramedy, I won't even take the comment away from Chris, but he was the one that mentioned on a very special episode of Spider-Man, everybody cries in this damn movie. Where's the action?
Yeah.
I'll be brief because I know that you Jerry definitely want to get into it, and I know that
no, but you please want to hear what you have to say, so please
couple things. There were just a couple of moments in the movie that really didn't make any sense, from Harry Osborn getting selective short-term memory loss and then looking like Terry Schiavo's brother whenever he saw Peter and Mary Jane smiling at him and, oh guys, what's going on? And then Spider-Man flying past the American flag yet again. So I'm thinking I want to stand up and go, Spider-Man, saving the world again. And then, yeah, exactly. And the point of it all is that, I understand that there's going to be certain things that are not going to flow because it is a movie. We have to put as much information as possible within these 2.5, 3 hours. God forbid this movie was 3 hours long because I would have fallen asleep. But, I have a certain expectation whenever I go see a movie that costs $250 million to make.
300.
About $1 billion worldwide as far as marketing costs and everything. And yes, it did get the big money. It got $148 million. It averaged over 32,000 per theater. It was the widest opening ever, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I had more fun with Hot Fuzz. It was almost a matter like anyone on the panel, but you guys read comic books. With Venom saying that I enjoy this, and he never referred to himself as a singular person. It was always like we want to kill Spider-Man, we want to kill Peter Parker. He always had the sense of duty and honor. That's why it was kind of like the anti-hero. He wasn't really hated. He was just somebody's like the bad guy that you rooted for. And I didn't get any of that. He was just spiteful. And then Sandman wisping away like the plastic bag in American Beauty. And whenever he finally taught Spider-Man and Harry and Mary Jane their lessons for the evening.
Right, forget about all the carnage that Sandman just caused. The city isn't going to get paid back for any of that. Spider-Man just says, you're okay, Sandman, and he floats away.
Wait till that bill from Mayor Bloomberg comes.
Mark, just give it to me straight, man. Did you like it or not?
No.
That's what we want to hear.
All right, thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll see you later tonight when we watch Sopranos.
Yeah, thanks for letting me rant. I'll talk to you guys later.
Cool, thanks,
Bye-bye, man. All right. I say we skip our flick picks, just post them up on the blog.
Sounds good to me.
And let's continue on with this conversation. We got one more. We got another caller. Can I get him in real quick, Jerry?
Yeah, hell yeah.
301 area code. That's your neck of the woods, Jerry. 301.
Yes, it is.
Right,
I don't know who it would be, but let's find out.
301, you're on.
Hi, this is Liz. I'm also known as Case Pearl.
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
Fine. How you doing?
Good.
I just wanted to say I'm enjoying your Spider-Man conversation, but I chose not to go see Spider-Man this weekend.
Good for you. You went to go see Lucky You instead.
I wish. No, actually, I didn't want to see Lucky. I wanted to see Away from Her, but it's kind of hard to find around here.
Yeah, it's not until next weekend.
I'm going to tell you, I've seen Away from Her. It is stunning.
Yeah, I totally want to see it. So the reason why I didn't want to see Spider-Man was your conversation earlier about Wild Hogs, the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I've been going to the theater on Fridays and Saturday nights all my life, and the last few years, it just has not been fun anymore. There's no fights in the theaters. People are noisy, and not good noisy where you're enjoying the film, you're screaming, you're laughing, you're crying. People are just bored to death with these over CGI special effects that are not approachable films where you don't feel connected. It's bigger than you. It doesn't need you. It doesn't care about you. And all it's going to need you for later is to buy a DVD with a special extra feature who we really don't care about. We'll watch once and put it on the shelf.
You know, that's the cumulative effect of these movies too. They numb you.
They do.
Yeah, you just can't get enough kind of sensory experience from them anymore.
That's true.
They just beat you down.
And you know, I'm up for a good sensory perception, put your brain on hold. But I had the same problem with 300, which people loved, absolutely adored.
Not everyone loved it. I was lukewarm towards it.
But
I was ice cold with it. So.
Well, a lot of people I know did, though.
I think it's interesting to bring up that, and you can find this online. The Slavoj Zizek, who we were talking about earlier, he loved 300. He hated the lives of others.
Well, he's got issues.
Yeah, look him up. It's an interesting reading. But thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Jerry. Nice to see you.
Likewise.
Bye.
Take care.
Okay, so I guess it's time for me to get to Spider-Man 3.
You can get to Spider-Man 3, and then we'll go to this 202 caller. What'd you think of it, Jerry?
You know, I'm going to start off with a Peter Venkman, Howard Beale rant. Have we all gone mad? It's a movie based on a kid who gets bitten by a spider. Let's not forget that. Yes, I realize that Spider-Man is an American icon and all that bullshit, but let's be honest with it. Let's just be honest. I was spoiled by the first two films. I felt they really rose above the usual comic book adaptation bullshit. But this one brings it right back down. The best thing I can say about Spider-Man 3 is this. It's cartoonish. That's the best thing I can say. It's cartoonish. It brings it back down to reality. It's not everything I thought the first two were. But I got to be honest with you. I don't go into these films with high expectations. I just can't. I was burned, and it took me a long time to realize this, but I was burned by Mr. Lucas with the prequels. And after a couple times of watching Attack of the Clones, you realize, wow, these are just really movies. They're not events anymore. They're just movies. And when you come to that realization, you know, it is heart-wrenching, but it's true. You know, Spider-Man 3 is what it is. It's to make sure that the guy from Sony, the CEO, that his kids don't have to worry about anything. You know, they'll be taken care of for the rest of their lives. That's what it is. You know,
everyone's crucifying this movie. I'm coming at it as someone that's not particularly a comic book fan.
I'm not crucifying it. I've been very fair to it, I think.
No. I'm saying, in general, you will hear more negative about Spider-Man 3 than positive.
Oh, yeah, you will.
Whatever the box office gross says. I liked it. I saw it this morning, and I'm not saying this just to be different from you guys.
Did you have a Jim Beam before you went in?
Actually, I saw it at 10:30 this morning, so it might have been like, and I stayed up till 5, like prepping for this interview, so it might have been just exhaustion.
Okay, you're getting a free pass. Don't worry.
I was delirious, so I would have enjoyed, a cavity search.
Whoa, okay.
This movie, it's a mess, and I accept that. And I kind of thought from the feelers that I had out there that it was a mess. I found a lot of enjoyable stuff in it. I found the moment when I thought that the first hour was pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the moment they say it went south, went in the wrong direction during the whole Tobey Maguire dancing thing.
Yeah.
I loved. That was probably my favorite part of the movie.
Really?
It was very goofy and endearing, and
you weren't getting a blowjob during that scene.
Yeah, really. Was Jenna Jameson with you?
And I think it was pretty much the only thing in the film that felt spontaneous.
Really? Okay.
That felt alive and unexpected. I kind of like that. I think that there are so many things wrong with the movie. It's silly. Peter Parker's evil now because he's wearing eyeliner and he has a goth haircut. And James Franco is all of a sudden, his performance is dictated by, either he has a sour look on his face or a goofy smile. I think there's tons of stuff that you can point out. The Venom character seems arbitrary. It seems like an afterthought. But I thought that thematically it had a line, and it followed through pretty well with all of the characters fitting into that.
Wow, okay. Sam Raimi should write you a thank you note.
That's what I'm bucking for, actually. I'm hoping to get that letter soon. Let's hear from 202 area code. 202, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi. It's Napoleon B. It seems kind of strange to say that. I usually write that.
Oh, my God. Folks, this is history in the making. We have NB on the line. This is one of the greatest bloggers there is. This is
Welcome.
Awesome.
Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks very much. I think I've got a little bit of MySpace fusion going on today. I was just looking at another blog earlier today. Someone had a Slavoj Žižek video where he's talking about the socio-cultural implications of different types of European toilet designs. There's a lot of shit out there in the cinema, too.
Yeah, there is. You know that.
But, I'm pretty much a casual moviegoer. I'm not really well-equipped to talk about Lynch or Hitchcock films at any kind of intellectual level, and I'm not a Spider-Man fan at all, but I wanted to go back to something you guys were talking about earlier about sort of lamenting the state of American cinema.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time over in Europe watching European films, and it seemed to me that on average, you have a good movie-going experience with European films. I don't know if that's some kind of stereotype, some sort of snobbish view that European films are better. But the fact is, they do seem to be more enjoyable, and I'm wondering, is it just because we have Hollywood and the whole, sort of money-making machine that you guys were talking about, that American cinema seems to be more disappointing?
Are you saying that when you saw films in Europe, that they seem to have a better time watching the European films or the American?
Right, European films. Yeah, of course there are the American films that are over there as well, but I'm speaking of your average European film, whether it's a French film or a Spanish film or an Italian film.
Are they? Do you find that they're more respectful of the experience?
Well, I think moviegoers. I think your previous caller was just talking about the general experience in the movie. It is different in Europe. People spend a lot less time munching on large quantities of crunchy food and.
Yeah, they're not eating the nachos like 20 minutes before the film starts.
Right. But for me as a moviegoer in Europe, even watching films with subtitles, again, it just seemed to me that whereas here in the United States, I find that maybe one film out of 10 seems to have been worth watching.
Yeah, like
watching a European film, it seemed like at least half the time I left satisfied with the experience. And when I say intellectually, that again starts to sound like a typical sort of snobbish view.
Not at all, Andy, not at all.
But again, do you think it's just a simple matter of what you guys were talking about, that because we have this movie industry in Hollywood, that therefore the quality of the product is like everything else in our society, like Budweiser or Coors beer, as opposed to some kind of...
Yeah, I think you're right. And,
yes.
And tell Josie B I want to meet her.
It's becoming more and more like that.
Well, I'll see if I can get her in a film.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate your call.
Great call.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.
All
right, that's all the time we have. We got a minute left. We got to.
Oh man, we had a good time tonight.
It went by in a flash. I tell you
what. More to say.
You want to stay on for another 10 minutes?
I can't. I got to go to dinner, but it has been nice talking with you.
Yeah.
All right. Then we'll sign off.
We'll sign off.
Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you to Dave Stimson of Bit by Bit Studios, Winter Haven in Lakeland, Florida, the best recording studio for all your recording needs. He's incredible. And thanks everyone out there for listening.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.